It's quiet now, isn't it? The kind of quiet that only arrives late in the evening, when the day's demands have finally loosened their grip, when the phone stops ringing, when the tasks are done, or left undone until tomorrow, when it's just you and the darkness and the soft sounds of the world settling down. You're here, right now, and that's exactly where you need to be. There's nothing to fix tonight, nothing to prove, no urgency waiting in the wings. The hours ahead belong to rest, and you've earned them, every single one. Tonight, I want to talk with you about something we all carry, but rarely speak of: the seasons of a life. Not spring, summer, autumn, winter in the calendar sense, though those matter too, but the seasons we move through as human beings, the chapters that unfold whether we're ready for them or not. The way we change, slowly, like a tree that doesn't notice its own growth until suddenly, one day, its branches reach higher than they ever have before. You've lived through so many seasons already, you know this. And yet, in the quiet moments like this one, it can be hard to see the full shape of it all. Hard to understand how each season prepared you for the next. Hard to recognize that even the difficult seasons, the ones you wouldn't choose to return to, gave you something you still carry. So let's sit with this together for a while. Let's move gently through the seasons of being alive, not to analyze or judge them, just to recognize them, to honor them, to see them for what they were and what they made possible. Take your time. Breathe easy. There's no rush. We have all night. Do you remember what it felt like to be young? Not just the age, but the sensation of it. The feeling that time stretched out endlessly before you, like an ocean you couldn't see the end of. When a year felt like forever, when summer vacation was its own small lifetime. There was a particular kind of wonder in those early years. Everything was new. The world revealed itself slowly, piece by piece. The first time you tasted something sweet, the first time you felt grass under your bare feet, the first time you understood that other people had thoughts and feelings just like you did, private worlds you couldn't see into. You learned by touching, tasting, trying. You fell down and got back up without thinking about it. Scraped knees healed, bruised feelings faded. The next day always brought something else to discover. And you were so certain about things, weren't you? Certain about what you liked and what you didn't. Certain about fairness and unfairness. Certain that you understood how the world worked, even when you absolutely didn't. That certainty was a gift, even if it wasn't accurate. It gave you courage. It let you move forward without the weight of doubt. You had dreams then. Maybe you remember them, maybe you don't. Dreams about who you would become, what you would do, where you would go. Some of those dreams were wild and impossible. Some were quiet and simple. All of them mattered because they were yours. And even if life didn't unfold the way those early dreams suggested, even if you became someone different than you imagined, those dreams still served a purpose. They pulled you forward. They gave you something to reach toward. They taught you that wanting something, hoping for something, was part of being alive. There were adults in your early world who seemed so tall, so certain, so complete. Parents, grandparents, teachers, neighbors. You looked up at them and thought they had everything figured out. They seemed to move through the world with a confidence you couldn't imagine possessing. Now, from this distance, you understand they were figuring it out too. They had their own doubts, their own fears, their own moments of not knowing what to do next. But they showed up anyway. They did their best. And maybe you can see them more clearly now, more compassionately than you could then. That season of wonder and certainty and big, impossible dreams, it wasn't wasted just because things changed. It was the foundation, the soil everything else grew from. You needed that innocence, that hopefulness, that sense of endless possibility. It gave you the courage to step forward into all the seasons that followed. Then came the season of becoming. You probably didn't recognize it at first. It crept up slowly, somewhere in those teenage years or early 20s, or whenever it happened for you. The moment when you started to understand that you were separate from your family, separate from your childhood, separate from the expectations others had placed on you. You were becoming yourself. And it wasn't always comfortable, was it? There were moments of confusion, moments when you didn't recognize the person in the mirror, moments when you felt too much or not enough, too loud or too quiet, too ambitious or not ambitious enough. You tried on different versions of yourself, different ways of speaking, dressing, being. Some fit, some didn't. You made choices that seemed monumentally important at the time, and maybe they were, and maybe they weren't. It's hard to say now. You fell in love, perhaps, or you watched others fall in love and wondered when it would be your turn. You felt the particular ache of wanting to be chosen, wanting to matter to someone else in a way that felt significant and real. The first time someone truly saw you, really looked at you and understood something essential about who you were, it felt like magic, like being recognized, like coming home to yourself through someone else's eyes. And you worked. You studied, or you labored, or you searched for your place in the world. You learned what you were good at and what you weren't. You discovered that some things that looked easy from the outside were actually quite hard, and some things you thought would be impossible turned out to be within your reach after all. There were rejections in that season. There always are. Jobs you didn't get, people who didn't love you back, doors that closed before you could walk through them. And each rejection felt enormous at the time. Each one seemed to say something definitive about who you were and what you deserved. But you kept going anyway. You had to. There was no other choice except to move forward, even when you didn't know where you were going. You found your people, or some of them. You built friendships that felt like they would last forever, and some of them did, and some of them didn't. You learned that people come into your life for reasons you can't always understand, that someone can be important to you for a season and then drift away, and that doesn't diminish what you shared. There were late-night conversations that felt like they mattered more than anything, moments of connection so deep you thought they would change you forever. And maybe they did, in quiet ways you didn't recognize until much later. You made mistakes. Of course you did. Everyone does. You said things you wish you could take back. You hurt people without meaning to, or maybe meaning to in the moment, caught up in your own pain or anger or fear. You trusted the wrong people sometimes. You doubted yourself when you should have been certain, and were certain when you should have had doubts. You experienced heartbreak, the kind that made you wonder if you'd ever feel whole again, the kind that taught you that emotional pain can be just as real, just as physical as any wound to the body. But you healed, slowly, not completely perhaps, because we all carry scars, but enough to keep living, enough to risk caring again. You also discovered your own strength during this season, the moments when you stood up for yourself, when you said no to something that didn't serve you, when you chose your own path instead of the one others expected you to follow. Through all of it, you were becoming, taking shape, learning what you stood for and what you wouldn't tolerate, building the person you would carry forward into all the seasons that followed. And that person, the one you were becoming, was worth the struggle, worth the confusion, worth every difficult moment, because that person was real, authentic, uniquely, irreplaceably you. Then life started to settle into something more recognizable. The season of building arrived. Maybe you built a career, maybe you built a family, maybe you built a home, literally or figuratively, maybe you built a life that looked nothing like what you expected, but it was yours, and you inhabited it the best way you knew how. This season had a different rhythm. There were responsibilities now, people depending on you, or work that needed doing, or commitments that couldn't be ignored. The freedom of youth gave way to something steadier, something more rooted. You woke up early, you went to work, or you cared for children, or you tended to the daily tasks that keep a life moving forward. You paid bills, you fixed things when they broke, you made meals and washed dishes and folded laundry and mowed lawns and all the thousand small tasks that nobody celebrates but everyone depends on. And in the middle of all that routine, you were building something, even if you couldn't see it at the time, even if it felt ordinary or mundane, or like you were just getting through the days. You were building stability, building trust, building the foundation that would hold you and others up. There were people in your life during this season, maybe a partner who counted on you, maybe children who looked to you for everything from food to comfort to answers you weren't sure you had, maybe aging parents who needed your help and patience, maybe colleagues or friends who relied on your presence. And you showed up, day after day, even when you were tired, even when you didn't feel like it, even when you wondered if anyone noticed or appreciated what you were doing. You showed up because that's what this season required. That's what love looks like in the middle of life. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the steady, quiet commitment to being there, to doing what needs doing, to holding things together, even when you're not sure how. There were joys in this season too. Moments of pride when something you worked hard for came to fruition. Moments of connection when you looked across the dinner table or the room and felt gratitude for the people sharing your life. Moments of accomplishment, small and large. Moments when you realized you were capable of more than you thought. The first time you truly felt needed in a way that mattered, it changed something in you. It gave you purpose. It anchored you to the world in a new way. You learned to compromise during this season, to negotiate, to find middle ground between what you wanted and what was possible, to balance your own needs with the needs of others. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes it felt like sacrifice. Sometimes it was sacrifice. But there were also sacrifices others made for you, times when people showed up for you, supported you, carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. And maybe you didn't fully appreciate it at the time, but you can see it now. The web of mutual support that held you all together. You became someone people could count on, someone reliable, someone who followed through. And there's a particular satisfaction in that, in knowing you were trustworthy, that your word meant something, that when you said you'd do something, you did it. There were challenges too, times when the weight of responsibility felt crushing, times when you wondered if you were doing it right, whatever it was, times when you felt inadequate to the task in front of you. But you did it anyway. You figured it out, or you muddled through, or you asked for help. You found ways forward even when the path wasn't clear. And there were moments of unexpected beauty in the midst of all that building. A child's laugh that stopped you in your tracks, a sunset you noticed on your way home from work, a conversation with your partner late at night after everyone else was asleep, a project completed, a problem solved, a connection deepened. These moments were gifts, little reprieves from the ongoing work of life, reminders that even in the busiest seasons, there was still room for wonder, for joy, for the simple pleasure of being alive. You also discovered things about yourself during this season, strengths you didn't know you had, patience you didn't think you possessed, creativity in solving problems, resilience in facing setbacks. You learned that you could function on less sleep than you thought, that you could handle more stress than seemed possible, that you could love more deeply, worry more intensely, and care more fiercely than you ever imagined. And that is enough. It always was enough. But seasons change. They always do. There came a season, or it's coming still, when things started to shift again, when the building slowed, when the people who needed you every day started to need you differently or less often, when the work that filled your time began to recede, when you looked up from the tasks of daily life and realized that something had changed. The season of release had arrived. Maybe your children grew up and moved away. Maybe your career ended or evolved. Maybe you lost someone important and their absence created a space you didn't know how to fill. Maybe your body started to slow down to remind you that you can't do everything you once could. This season can feel strange at first, unsettling. There's more time, more space, more quiet than you're used to. The urgency of earlier seasons has faded. You're not rushing towards something anymore. You're not building in the same way. And that can bring up complicated feelings. Some people feel relief in this season. The pressure's off. The constant demands have eased. There's room to breathe, to rest, to finally tend to yourself in ways you couldn't before. Others feel loss, a sense that something important has ended, that you're no longer as needed, as vital, as central to others' lives as you once were, that your purpose, the thing that defined you for so long, has slipped away. Both of those feelings are real, both are valid, and both can exist at the same time, tangled together in your chest. The truth is, this season asks something different of you. It asks you to let go of who you used to be, on the roles you played, and the identity you built around them. It asks you to let go, not of everything, but of the need to prove yourself, the need to be productive in the way the world usually measures productivity. It asks you to be, rather than to do. And that's harder than it sounds, isn't it? Especially if you spent decades doing, if your worth felt tied to your usefulness, if being needed was how you knew you mattered. But here's what this season offers, if you can open yourself to it: freedom. The freedom to explore parts of yourself that got set aside, to pursue interests that always took a back seat to more pressing concerns, to move at your own pace, to say no without guilt, to say yes without justification, the freedom to rest without feeling like you're wasting time. Because rest isn't waste, it never was, but it takes this season to really understand that. You might rediscover old passions during this season, things you loved when you were younger but set aside when life got busy. Maybe you pick up a book and realize you have time to read it slowly, savoring each page. Maybe you take walks without a destination, just to feel your body moving. Maybe you sit in your garden or on your porch and simply watch the world go by. There's also depth in this season that wasn't possible before. You've lived enough now to see patterns, to understand how things connect, to recognize that what seemed like disaster at one point led to something unexpected at another, to see your own life from a distance and understand it better than you did while you were living it. You have perspective now, hard-earned, lived-in perspective, and that's a kind of wisdom that only comes with time. You can look at younger people and recognize their struggles because you've been there. You can offer kindness where once you might have offered judgment because you know how complicated life is, how rarely things are simple or clear. You can forgive yourself, perhaps, for the mistakes you made in earlier seasons, not because they didn't matter, but because you understand now that you were doing the best you could with what you knew, that everyone is stumbling through this existence trying to figure it out as they go. This season of release is also a season of acceptance, accepting that some things will never be the way you wanted them to be, that some relationships can't be fixed, that some questions don't have answers, that life is messy and imperfect and doesn't follow the script you imagined. And somehow, accepting all of that brings a kind of peace that wasn't available before, a softness, a gentleness with yourself and with the world. You start to notice different things now: the quality of morning light, the way shadows move across your walls, the particular shade of green the trees turn in early spring, details you were too busy to notice before or too preoccupied. Time feels different in this season, both slower and faster somehow. Slower because you're not rushing, faster because you're more aware of its passage. Each day matters in a way it didn't before. Each conversation, each moment of beauty, each quiet hour. Throughout all these seasons, there have been small moments that stayed with you, moments that didn't seem important at the time, but somehow lodged themselves in your memory and won't let go. The way morning light came through a particular window in a house you lived in 20 years ago, the smell of coffee brewing on an ordinary Tuesday, the sound of someone's laugh, someone who mattered to you, the feeling of rain on your face during a walk you took for no special reason. These moments are part of the seasons too, the quiet texture of life, the moments between the moments, the ordinary instances that somehow contain everything. You didn't know you were supposed to pay attention to them when they happened. You couldn't have known that decades later, these tiny fragments would come back to you, would rise up from memory when you least expect it, carrying a feeling you can't quite name. Maybe it's the feeling of having been alive, of having existed in a particular time and place, of having moved through the world and been touched by it, of having been here. There's a bittersweet quality to these memories, isn't there? A longing for something you can't return to, a tenderness for your younger self, for the people who shared those moments, for the simplicity of an afternoon that felt like nothing special. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the special moments aren't the big ones we think we're supposed to remember, the weddings and graduations and promotions and achievements. Maybe what stays with us is smaller, more personal, more ordinary. The way your mother's hands looked while she was doing some simple task, the conversation you had with a friend while sitting on a porch somewhere, the feeling of being tired after a good day's work, the comfort of a familiar routine, a favorite sweater you wore until it fell apart, the creaking sound a particular door made in an old apartment, the view from a window where you used to stand and think, the taste of something your grandmother made, a recipe you wish you'd ask for. These moments are woven through all the seasons. They're the thread that connects everything, the proof that you were here, that you lived not just the dramatic peaks and valleys, but the vast, important middle, the everyday existence that makes up most of a life. And when you add up all those small moments, all those ordinary days, they amount to something beautiful, something that was yours alone, a life that was lived, not perfectly, but genuinely. You had favorite places, spots where you felt at home, at ease, at peace. Maybe a chair where you always sat, a corner of a park you returned to again and again, a cafe where you knew the staff, a stretch of road you drove so often you could do it without thinking. These places held you. They became part of your internal landscape. And even if you can't return to them now, even if they've changed or disappeared, they're still there in your memory, still offering that same sense of belonging they always did. Of course, not all seasons have been gentle. You know this better than anyone. There have been seasons of difficulty, times when life felt almost unbearable, when loss arrived and wouldn't leave, when you endured things you never thought you'd have to endure, when the world revealed itself to be harder, crueler, and more indifferent than you wanted to believe. Maybe you lost someone you loved. Maybe you lost several someones, and the grief was enormous, wasn't it? It took up all the space in your chest. It colored everything. It changed the way the world looked, the way food tasted, the way you moved through your days. Grief has a weight unlike anything else. It's heavy and persistent. It doesn't follow a schedule. It arrives at unexpected moments, triggered by nothing and everything. A song on the radio, a scent in the air, a date on the calendar, the absence where someone used to be. And you learn to live with it, not to get over it because grief doesn't work that way, but to carry it, to make room for it alongside everything else you carry, to understand that love and loss are two sides of the same coin, and the pain of losing someone is the price of having loved them. Or maybe you faced illness, yours or someone else's, and you learned what it means to be afraid in a deep, ongoing way, to live with uncertainty, to hope and fear at the same time, to navigate a medical system that felt impersonal and overwhelming, to sit in waiting rooms and hospital hallways and wonder what comes next. Illness teaches humility. It reminds you that you're not in control, not really, that the body has its own timeline, its own vulnerabilities, that health is precious and fragile and not to be taken for granted. Or maybe you struggled with loneliness, the particular ache of feeling unseen, unknown, disconnected from the people around you, the sense that everyone else had figured out how to belong and you somehow missed the instructions, that you were on the outside of something you couldn't quite reach. Loneliness can be profound even when you're surrounded by people. It's not about being alone, it's about feeling alone, about not being truly known or understood, about going through the motions of connection without the substance of it. Or maybe you faced financial hardship, the stress of not knowing how you'd make ends meet, the shame of falling short, of needing help, of having to make impossible choices between necessities, the weight of worrying about money day after day after day. Financial stress has a way of coloring everything. It makes it hard to think about anything else. It creates a constant background anxiety that never quite goes away. It affects your sleep, your health, your relationships, and your sense of security in the world. Or maybe your struggles were quieter, more internal, depression that arrived like fog and wouldn't lift, anxiety that kept you up at night, wounds from the past that never quite healed, a sense that something was wrong with you couldn't name or fix. These invisible struggles can be the hardest to bear because they're so difficult to explain to others, because there's no visible wound to point to, because people might not understand why you can't just snap out of it, just think positive, just try harder. Whatever your difficult seasons looked like, you know their weight. You know what it cost you to keep going, to get out of bed, to put one foot in front of the other, to survive. And you did survive. You're here now. That's not nothing. That's everything, actually. The difficult seasons didn't break you, even though they might have bent you, even though you left marks, even though you're not the same person you were before them. You learned things in those seasons that you couldn't have learned any other way. You learned your own strength. You learned that you could endure more than you thought possible. You learned who showed up for you when things got hard, and that knowledge matters. You also learned compassion, for yourself maybe, though that one's hardest one, but certainly for others. You learned to recognize pain in other people because you felt it yourself. You learned that you can't judge someone's struggle from the outside because you don't know what they're carrying. The difficult seasons taught you what actually matters. They stripped away the pretense, the superficial concerns, the things you thought were important but weren't. When life gets hard, you find out quickly what's essential and what's not. And what's essential, you discovered, is simpler than you thought. Connection, kindness, a moment of peace, someone who listens, the strength to face another day, the hope that things might get better, even if you can't see how yet. You don't have to be grateful for the hard seasons. You don't have to find silver linings or pretend they were blessings in disguise. Some things are just hard, and that's all they are. But you can acknowledge that you survived them, that you're still here, that the hard seasons didn't get the last word. And that matters. It matters immensely. One of the strange truths about living through many seasons is that you start to see time differently. When you were young, time moved so slowly. A week felt long. A year felt eternal. Summers stretched out forever, and you couldn't imagine ever being old. But somewhere along the way, time started to speed up. Weeks began to fly by. Years, too. You'd blink, and suddenly another birthday had arrived, another anniversary, another holiday season. The markers of time started coming faster and faster, like fence posts passing by a car window. And now, maybe you look back and wonder where it all went. How did so many years pass? How did the children become adults? How did your own parents grow old? How did you? It can feel unsettling, this acceleration of time, like you're missing something, like life is rushing past and you can't hold on to it. But here's another way to think about it. Maybe time feels faster now because you're more present, because you've lived enough to recognize that moments don't last, that everything is temporary, that this day, this hour, this conversation will be gone before you know it. And so you notice more, you pay attention, you try to be here, really here, while you still can. Young people often live in the future. They're always thinking about what comes next, what they'll do tomorrow, next week, next year. They're rushing towards something, toward the life they think they're supposed to have. But you've already done that rushing. You've already arrived at the future you once imagined, and it probably looked different than you expected. So you're not in such a hurry anymore. You can sit with the present moment. You can feel the weight of it, the texture, the particular quality of light in your kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon, the sound of birds outside your window, the taste of your coffee, the feeling of being alive, right now, in this specific moment that will never come again. This is what the seasons give you, not just experiences, but the ability to appreciate experience, not just time, but the wisdom to know what time means. You understand now that life isn't a problem to be solved. It's not a test you can pass or fail. It's not a competition you can win. It's just this, the daily unfolding, the seasons moving through you, and you moving through them, the accumulation of moments that add up to a life. And your life, with all its imperfections and disappointments and unexpected turns, is valuable. It's meaningful. There's a particular kind of knowing that comes with having lived. You can sense things now that you couldn't before. You can tell when someone is pretending to be fine but isn't. You can recognize patterns in behavior, in relationships, in the way events unfold. You've seen enough to know that most situations aren't as unique as they feel in the moment. This knowing isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity, about understanding human nature, including your own, about recognizing that we're all flawed and trying and doing our best with what we have. There's something to be said for the comfort of patterns, the rhythms that repeat themselves across the seasons. The way you've made the same cup of tea or coffee thousands of times, the ritual of it so familiar your hands know what to do without thinking. The route you've walked countless times, your feet knowing the way. The people you've known for so long that you can finish each other's sentences, predict each other's reactions. These patterns can feel mundane, boring even. When you were young, you probably wanted more excitement, more novelty, more adventure. But there's a different kind of richness in familiarity, in the things you return to again and again, in the knowing that comes from repetition. Your favorite chair knows the shape of your body. Your home knows your footsteps. The people who have been in your life for years know your stories, your quirks, your fears and hopes. This knowing, this familiarity, is its own kind of treasure. It's the opposite of loneliness, even when you're alone. It's the sense of being located in the world, of having a place, of belonging to the patterns you've created. And when you think about the seasons of your life, you can see these patterns weaving through them, the things that remained constant even as everything else changed, the values you held on to, the small rituals that gave structure to your days, the ways of being that felt essentially you, no matter the season you were in. Maybe you've always been someone who noticed the natural world, who paused to look at the sky, to feel the weather on your skin. That thread runs through all your seasons, connecting the child you were to the person you are now. Or maybe you've always been someone who cared deeply about others, who worried about people, who wanted to help, who couldn't stand to see suffering. That tendency has shaped every season of your life, even when it cost you something. Or maybe you've always had a quiet strength, a stubbornness maybe, or a resilience that kept you going when others might have quit. That core of determination has been with you all along. Or maybe you've always been curious, always asking questions, always wanting to understand, always looking deeper. That curiosity has led you down unexpected paths and opened doors you didn't know existed. These constants, these patterns, they're part of who you are, and they've given your life continuity. They've made you recognizable to yourself, even as so much else has changed. There's comfort in that, in knowing that despite everything, despite all the seasons you've weathered, you're still fundamentally you. Changed, yes. Deepened, certainly, but still the same person at your core. The routines you've built over the years, they're not just habits, they're anchors. They're the scaffolding that holds your days together. They provide structure when everything else feels uncertain. And there's beauty in that structure, in the predictability of your morning routine, in the familiar rhythm of your week, in the annual cycle of holidays and birthdays and seasons turning. These patterns remind you that life goes on, that there's order beneath the chaos, that you're part of something larger than yourself. As you move through the later seasons of life, you might find yourself thinking more about legacy, about what you'll leave behind, what you've contributed, whether your life has mattered in some lasting way. It's a natural question to ask. We all want to feel that our existence meant something, that we didn't just pass through without a trace. But legacy isn't what we often think it is. It's not about grand achievements or public recognition. It's not about wealth or fame or monuments with your name on them. Those things might feel important, but they're not what actually lasts. Your legacy is simpler and more profound than that. It's the kindness you showed to someone who was struggling, the words of encouragement you offered when someone doubted themselves, the patience you demonstrated when it would have been easier to be harsh, the forgiveness you extended when you could have held a grudge. It's the children you raised, if you raised them, and the values you tried to instill. Not perfectly, because no one parents perfectly, but with love and effort and the desire to help them become good people. The time you spent listening to them, the sacrifices you made so they could have opportunities, the example you set, for better or worse. It's the work you did, whatever work that was, the care you took, the responsibility you carried, the way you showed up day after day and did what needed doing, even when no one was watching, the quality you insisted on, the integrity you maintained, even when it would have been easier to cut corners. It's the friendships you nurtured, the time you spent listening, the laughter you shared, the moments of connection that made someone else feel less alone, the way you remembered people's birthdays, the way you checked in when someone was going through a hard time, the way you celebrated their successes. It's the small acts of service you performed without thinking, holding a door, helping someone carry something heavy, offering directions to someone who was lost, smiling at a stranger who looked like they needed it. These tiny gestures that seemed like nothing, but might have meant everything to someone else. It's the ripples, the small effects you had on other people that spread out in ways you'll never see. The person who remembered something you said at exactly the moment they needed to hear it. The child who grew up feeling loved because you were part of their world. The colleague who felt supported because you took time to help. The friend who changed the course of their life because of a conversation you don't even remember having. You can't measure these things. You can't quantify them. But they're real. They matter. They're the substance of a life well lived. And the truth is, you don't need to leave behind anything more than that. You don't need to be remembered by history. You don't need your name on a building or a book or a prize. You just need to have been here, to have lived with as much kindness and honesty and courage as you could manage, to have loved the people in your life as well as you knew how, to have participated in the great ongoing project of human existence. The world is different because you were in it, not in some grand, obvious way necessarily, but in countless small ways that add up to something real. You changed things. You mattered. You still matter. Your existence sent out ripples that touched other people, and those people touched others, and on and on. The web of connection and influence is vast and mostly invisible, but it's there. You're part of it. You always have been. And even if no one remembers your name in 100 years, even if there's no record of your existence, you still mattered. The love you gave still mattered. The kindness you showed still mattered. The moment you were there for someone when they needed you still mattered. Because life isn't about being remembered. It's about being present. It's about showing up and participating and caring while you're here. It's about the quality of your attention, the depth of your love, the sincerity of your effort. And by those measures, your life has already succeeded. There's a particular kind of peace that can come in these later seasons, not because everything is resolved or all your questions are answered, but because you've learned to live with uncertainty, with ambiguity, with the knowledge that life is complicated and messy and doesn't tie up neatly. You've learned that you don't have to understand everything, that it's okay not to have all the answers, that sometimes the wisest response is to simply acknowledge the mystery of it all. Why do we love the people we love? Why do some things matter to us and others don't? Why does time move the way it does? Why does loss hurt so much? Why is there beauty in the world? Why is there suffering? You don't know. No one really knows, and that's okay. What you do know is your own experience. You know what it feels like to be alive, to wake up in the morning, to feel sunlight on your skin, to taste something delicious, to hear music that moves you, to hold someone you care about, to sit quietly and simply exist. You know what it feels like to be sad, to be joyful, to be afraid, to be at peace. You know the whole range of human feeling because you've felt it all, and that's its own kind of knowledge, not intellectual understanding, but lived experience, the wisdom of the body and heart, not just the mind. You've learned to trust yourself, to trust your own perceptions and feelings and judgments, not in an arrogant way, but in a grounded way. You've lived enough to know what rings true for you and what doesn't. You've learned that other people's opinions, while sometimes valuable, don't define you, that you get to decide what matters to you, what you value, how you want to spend your time, who you want to be. You've earned the right to that autonomy, to that self-knowledge, to that quiet confidence in your own experience. And with that comes a kind of freedom. You don't need to perform for anyone anymore, don't need to pretend to be someone you're not, don't need to meet expectations that never fit you in the first place. You can just be yourself, fully, unapologetically yourself, flawed and imperfect and gloriously messily human. And there's peace in that, real peace, the kind that doesn't depend on external circumstances, the kind that comes from accepting yourself exactly as you are. You've stopped trying to be perfect. You've realized that perfection isn't the point, that being real is more important than being flawless, that your imperfections are part of what makes you uniquely you. You've also learned the value of silence, of not having to fill every moment with words or activity, of being comfortable with quiet, with stillness, with the space between things. When you were younger, silence might have felt uncomfortable, awkward, like something that needed to be filled. But now you understand that silence has its own richness, its own depth, that some of the most important moments happen in the spaces where nothing is being said. You've learned that you don't owe anyone an explanation for your choices, that no is a complete sentence, that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary, that setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. These lessons didn't come easily. They came through experience, through trial and error, through saying yes when you should have said no and learning from it, through people-pleasing until it exhausted you, and finally understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup. As we move toward the end of our time together tonight, I want you to think about something. Think about the person you were at different points in your life, the child you were, the young adult, the person in the middle of building their life, the person you are now. Can you feel compassion for all those versions of yourself? The child who didn't know what was coming, who was innocent and vulnerable and doing their best to understand a confusing world, who believed things would be simple and fair, who trusted easily and loved freely and hadn't learned to protect themselves. The young adult who was trying so hard to figure everything out, who made mistakes and felt things so intensely, who was both brave and terrified, often at the same time, who wanted so desperately to matter, to be seen, to find their place in the world. The person in the middle years who carried so much, who had responsibilities and worries and dreams they were trying to hold on to while managing everything else, who sometimes felt overwhelmed but kept going anyway, who sacrificed and compromised and did their best to balance everyone's needs, including their own. And the person you are now, who carries all of those earlier versions inside them, who has earned every line on their face, every ache in their body, every memory in their heart, who has survived everything that came before and is still here, still standing, still moving forward. All of these versions of you deserve kindness, deserve understanding, deserve to be seen with gentleness and grace. You've been hard on yourself sometimes. Most of us have. You've judged yourself for your mistakes, your failures, your inadequacies. You've wished you'd done things differently, been different, chosen better. But you were always doing the best you could with what you knew and what you had. Always. Even when it didn't feel like enough. Even when you fell short of your own expectations. You were always trying, always showing up to your life, even on the days when showing up was all you could manage. And that's worthy of respect, of appreciation, of love. So tonight, as you prepare for sleep, can you offer yourself some of that kindness? Can you look at your life with all its seasons and struggles and small victories and feel grateful for the person who lived it? That person is you, has always been you, will always be you. And you're worthy of your own compassion, your own forgiveness, your own love. You've made it this far, through childhood and youth and all the seasons that followed, through joy and sorrow, through connection and loss, through certainty and doubt, through ordinary days and extraordinary ones, through the mundane and the meaningful. You've loved people. You've been loved. You've worked and rested and struggled and celebrated. You've cried and laughed and wondered and hoped. You've been afraid and you've been brave, sometimes at the same time. You've been fully, completely, messily human, and that's exactly what you were meant to be. The seasons will keep changing. That's the nature of being alive. There will be more transitions, more adjustments, more moments of letting go and learning new ways of being. But you know how to move through seasons now. You've done it so many times already. You know that even when things are difficult, they don't stay that way forever. That winter eventually gives way to spring. That darkness eventually gives way to light. You know that you're more resilient than you sometimes think you are, that you have resources within yourself that you can draw on, that you've survived everything you've faced so far, and you'll survive whatever comes next. And you know that you're not alone. Even in your most solitary moments, you're part of something larger, part of the human family, part of the great cycle of life that has been unfolding for millennia. Others have walked this path before you, have felt what you feel, have wondered what you wonder, have struggled and survived and found meaning in their own way. And others will come after you, will face their own seasons, will learn their own lessons, will carry forward the love and wisdom you've added to the world, whether they know it or not. You're a link in that chain, a necessary part of the ongoing story, and that's a beautiful thing to be. The people who came before you, the ones who shaped you, who loved you, who taught you things without meaning to, they live on in you, in the ways you move through the world, in the values you hold, in the small habits and preferences and perspectives they passed down without either of you realizing it. And you'll live on too, in the people whose lives you've touched, in the children you raised or influenced, in the friends who carry pieces of your wisdom with them, in the strangers who remember a kindness you've long forgotten. This is how we continue, not through monuments or achievements, but through connection, through the passing on of love and understanding and human warmth from one generation to the next. You're part of that continuity, that beautiful, unbreaking thread of human connection that stretches back to the beginning and forward to whatever comes next. It's getting late now. The night is deep and quiet. Your body is ready for rest. You've lived a full day, a full life. You've done enough, been enough, tried enough. Now it's time to let go of it all for a while, to release the thoughts and worries and plans, to sink into the softness of your bed and let sleep come. Tomorrow will bring what it brings, but tonight, right now, you can rest. You can let yourself be held by the darkness, by the quiet, by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. You're safe here. You're exactly where you need to be. There's nothing more you need to do. The seasons of your life have brought you to this moment, this peaceful, quiet moment at the end of the day. And you're here. You made it. Through everything, you made it. Let your muscles relax. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands unfold. Let every part of your body settle into the support beneath you. You can stop holding everything together for these hours. You can stop being strong, stop being responsible, stop being anything other than a person resting in the dark. The world will turn without you for a while. The night will pass. The sun will rise again, and you'll be here to meet it, rested and renewed. But for now, just this, just rest, just peace, just the gentle embrace of sleep. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the darkness behind your eyelids become complete. Let it feel safe, comforting, like being wrapped in something soft. Your breath is slowing. Your thoughts are quieting. The day is releasing you. You've earned this rest. You deserve this peace, and it's yours to taking. So breathe slowly, let go, drift, and know that you are valued, you are loved, your life has mattered and continues to matter. The seasons you've lived through made you who you are, all of them, the joyful ones and the difficult ones, the exciting ones and the quiet ones, the seasons of building and the seasons of release. They've all been necessary, they've all been part of your journey, and that journey has been worth taking. Rest now, sleep deep, let the seasons carry you gently through the night. You don't have to think about any of this anymore. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to understand or analyze or make sense of anything. You just have to be, just exist, just rest in the knowledge that you've lived, you've loved, you have mattered. And when you wake, whenever that is, you'll still be here, still yourself, still part of this beautiful, complicated, precious existence. Until then, peace. Sweet, gentle, well-deserved peace. Let the night hold you. Let sleep take you. Let everything else fade away. You've done so well. You've come so far, and now you can rest. The seasons will continue their turning. The world will keep spinning. Time will keep flowing. But for now, for these hours, you can be still. You can be quiet. You can let it all go. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out slowly. Feel yourself sinking deeper into rest with each breath. There's nothing to chase anymore, nothing to prove, nowhere else to be. Just here, just now, just peace. Rest well, sleep deep, let the gentle darkness carry you home. Good night.